Hello, this is Antoine with another episode of Out and Up, where we encourage young athletes to achieve their very best outside of the game. And like every show, you know how I do. I'm gonna go ahead and let her introduce herself.
What's up, y'all? My name is Jordan Flowers. I go by the name of Flo. I currently live in Campbell, California, but I play volleyball at the College of San Mateo.
Cool. I appreciate you joining us, Jordan. You ready to get into the questions?
Yes, sir, let's do it.
All right. Where are you originally from, born and raised?
I was born and raised in San Jose, California. I didn't really live in the main part of San Jose. I kind of lived in different areas around, but I currently live in Campbell, California.
All right. And so you're a volleyball player. Where did sports start for you?
It all started with my dad. He played, well, he was All-American in high school, went to the military for a little bit, and then he went to San Jose State and then eventually pro. So I've always had sports in my life. And freshman year, that's when I started taking it more seriously.
All right. So were there some other sports that you played in your youth besides volleyball?
I played basketball, soccer, tried out track, I did gymnastics, and while I was doing volleyball in high school, I also did dance.
All right. So you're a volleyball player today, but I sometimes I ask athletes, was there another sport other than volleyball that you might have liked a little bit more?
Ooh, it would have to be dance. I don't know if it's technically a sport, but
All
it
right.
was definitely athletic for
You
sure.
you enjoy dancing more
Uh-huh.
than
Mhm.
okay. Now, do you still dance a little bit?
I try to practice from time to time. I don't really have time to go to like a dance workshop, especially with my old dance team, but whenever I can make it, I do my best.
All right. So you said in high school you started taking it serious. At what point in high school? Is it early in your freshman year? Like, what point did you start really recognizing that, hey, I can do pretty well in this sport?
It was like later freshman year. I don't know. I took it more seriously than most people, and that's just when I knew I had to make a few changes and like just pursue my dream of playing college volleyball.
Okay. So I will ask, did you play play for some traveling teams throughout high school or before high school?
Yeah, I played a couple I played on a couple of traveling teams throughout high school.
All right. And I always ask our athletes because some young athletes just coming up could be elementary school, middle school, and sometimes they enjoy a sport, and not always able to like really participate in club soccer and all the other traveling outlets, whether it's AAU basketball or all the Pop Warner football. I will ask you for the young athlete, how important is it to get involved with those outlets when it comes to traveling versus just playing for your school team?
It's very important because you're not just playing against the same people that you would usually play, like the same schools. With AAU, you get to play all sorts of people across the nation or within your state. And honestly, going against those people, it helps better your game and it helps figure out what you need to do better as a player.
All right, all right. What position do you actually play in volleyball?
Currently, I'm an outside hitter.
All right. What are some things over the years you've been able to do as far as drills to kind of really grow your game?
So I was a middle hitter most of my life. I barely played opposite or outside hitter until my first year of college. And it's just being very intentional with your reps and listening to directions because the more you dial in, the better you'll get at your game. Because I've noticed like the more individual you play, the more you just play based on what you know. It kind of disconnects you from the rest of the team. So it's just really dialing in on reps and being intentional with your movement.
All right. So as a student athlete, what's some advice you can give to young athlete? You can go back to high school, even thus far in college. What is some advice you give them about really balancing the fact that we know it's always said you're supposed to be a student first. So what are some things that you've been able to learn over the years from high school through college and really balancing your life as a student athlete?
I would say time management for sure, because you already have your practice schedule, your game schedule, so you already have that set up. Now, when it comes to your homework, I always recommend doing your homework as soon as possible and doing it when you can, just to get out of the way. Because a lot of people do wait until Sunday to do it, and I've been one of those people. So it's just really like looking at your schedule and looking at when you can get homework done or go to office hours And balancing that is very important because keeping your GPA up can't, like, let's say I were to get recruited to Stanford for volleyball. I would need to have a pretty high GPA to get into Stanford. So it's just kind of like maintaining your GPA, making sure you're on top of your stuff if you really want to go to like a bigger school, especially schools like Stanford.
Awesome. Awesome. So at what point in high school did you say, or did you recognize, I'm going to be able to play on another level? Like what time, at what point did you start really getting attention from some schools and start really focusing on going to the next level when it came to moving on in college?
I would say junior year, and
Okay.
this is when COVID hit, and this is when I really had to lock in, send emails because a lot of coaches weren't going to see me play. So that's when I started getting more attention from schools.
All right. And high school did you actually go to?
I went to Westmont High School.
All right. What were some of your best experiences and accomplishments in high school as a volleyball player?
Well, my first year I was on JV and we won league, and then moved up to varsity. I believe I was the only sophomore or the only person in my class. And then junior year we won league again, and then I was still like the only person in my class throughout my years of varsity.
Okay. All right. So when you started getting close to choosing a school, what were some of the other we're going to talk about where you decided to go so you can name them also, but what were some of the choices you had as far as moving on to play collegiate?
So it was Bethune-Cookman University, South Carolina State, Coppin State, Arkansas Little Rock, and Savannah State, I
Okay.
believe. Yeah.
All right. All right. So was your and for those listening, you hear that you named HBCUs. Was that your goal to go on to play at an HBCU?
Yes and no. It was
Okay.
definitely an open idea because I've heard a lot about HBCUs throughout my senior year, and I
Mhm.
thought that would be a great experience for me for sure. Um, my dream school is definitely San Jose State because it's right here and it's my hometown. But when I looked into HBCUs, I was like, oh, wait, this is like a once in a lifetime experience.
Okay.
So I really wanted to go for it.
All right. Well, that's awesome. So you go on to choose Bethune Cookman.
Mhm.
What was it that helped you to kind of lock in on that decision to move on and continue your career at Bethune Cookman?
First it was pointing out the pros and cons out of my offers. And then I just kind of went with my gut. I was like, where do I want to be at for 4 years? What's the vibe of the school? And also I was in group chats with people that were going to Bethune-Cookman, so it was pretty easy to make my decision.
All right. So you went from California to beautiful Florida. What was that transition like?
It was scary because it was just like I committed and I was like, oh my God, in like 2 months I have to go across the country. And it felt weird because that was the first time I moved out the house. And it's just much bigger because I'm in a whole different state.
Right.
So it felt cool because I felt like I was independent. It was like a new world. It felt like a fresh start, if anything.
Okay. All right. So what was that experience like? You went to Bethune-Cookman for how many years? How long did you stay at Bethune-Cookman?
A year and a half.
Year and a half. So what was the experience getting, starting off in college the first couple years? A lot of times, many people, not only the fact I always tip my hat to student athletes because you're not only going into another level of education, you're balancing another level of education while still competing at a high level in a sport. So I asked you, what was that transition like going from high school as a volleyball player and student athlete to then college as a student athlete? What was that transition like?
It was a big transition because high school, at least at my high school, it was like very chill and
Uh-huh.
like we still got work done, but we had fun. Like it was like a lot of fun. It was very loose. I feel like once I got to BCU, it was strictly business. There wasn't a whole lot of breaks.
Okay.
Like that, the intensity levels were there for sure.
All right. So I asked you, looking back, you have a young student athlete, high schooler in front of you. or group of athletes in front of you, what are some things that you can tell them beforehand to prepare them for that transition?
Just be ready to work because at the D1 level, they don't play around. It's like you need to be there on time, put 100% effort with what percent you have. And yeah, it's just being very locked in, staying out of trouble, making sure you're on top of your stuff on and off the court. It's like be that kid that the coach doesn't have to worry about. For me, like I always worked hard. I made sure I had all of my stuff for travel days and stuff. I made sure my grades were good. So yeah, just be that kid that the coach doesn't have to worry about.
Okay, all right. So currently you're at what school are you at now?
I'm at College of San Mateo.
College of San Mateo. Tell us what was your decision in making the transition?
So I realized how unhappy I was at Bethune-Cookman. And don't get me wrong, I loved the school. I received a lot of love from the students that went there as well. But I started to feel very homesick and just kind of out of place. And I noticed that I went from wanting to go to practice, being so excited, to just like kind of dreading it. And I was talking with my coach. I was like, I don't know if I could play volleyball right now. Like, I would prefer to just help you guys out with social media stuff than to just play volleyball. There was just a lot going on in my life. And so I talked to my parents. I was like, listen, I tried everything I could, and I'd just like to go home.
Okay. And I think that's so awesome. And I appreciate you being able to talk. I think so often athletes or young people or us as adults, we go through things and then we keep those experiences to ourselves. And I think I appreciate you so greatly for joining us on the show because so many other young athletes have gone through that same experience and will go through that same experience. And sometimes you'll have the athlete that gets so overwhelmed with that feeling, they'll just drop out of school and be done with that and then just be so confused in life. Where you being open to tell that story, like you give people hope that, hey, you can make a change, make a different decision, and continue on. You knew what was best for you. You knew how it was affecting you. And so just with the transition, moving on to the other school, how did you really, what are some things you learned during the transition? What are some things that you are now focused on? I know I talked to you prior to starting the recording, just what caught my eye because I reached out to Miss Flowers probably a year or two ago, probably around second season of the show. And so she was again going into, a D1 program. So very much so busy and with our schedules, we weren't able to lock in a show. But here we are a year and a half, 2 years later, and we're here. And I was able to see the clip that you posted just in regards to giving some people some tips on dealing with their mental health. And so what were some things you were able to learn during the process? And then what are some things that you can give to the other young athlete when it comes to dealing with, those sorts of situations?
So when I came home, I just told myself like I wanted to better my mental health. And since I decided to go to a 2 year, I'm like, this is a chance for me to better my skill as well. So first it's just being honest with yourself. I knew my mental health wasn't great. I knew my skills needed some work. So I made the decisions like trying therapy again. We have a mindset coach on campus, so I went to her. And going with that, it's just also being open-minded to receiving help and just improving yourself. And at College of San Mateo or just any California JUCO, you also have to play beach. So when I first transferred there, I had to play beach volleyball. And beach volleyball is definitely more of a mental game than indoor volleyball because there's only two of you guys. So you
Okay.
have to do all the passing, setting, hitting, shoot, even blocking and serving. And it took a whole beach season for me to really like get my mental together because at my old school, I feel like I was very self-critical. I was in a box. I didn't feel like myself. Like in high school, I was very competitive. I was loud. I didn't care. And I feel like in college, I was very quiet or I just played with fear. So with this transition, it was just being honest with myself, recognizing whenever I felt like depressed or anxious and just being willing to be open with that. Because the more you're closed off, the more you're like, oh, like I'm good, like I'm gonna ignore my feelings. It builds up over time, and sometimes that could be really bad for your mental health. So I worked really hard on my mindsets and just getting myself together, because everybody can support you and be like, you got this, like don't give up. But if you're not like advocating yourself and trying to like help yourself, then it's kind of hard to move up from there. So it's just really being your biggest advocate, um, being open to receiving help, but you have to make the initiative first.
That's good. That is great information. Just in that one little segment, you cover so many things, but one of the biggest things stuck out, and you said it at least two to three times, being honest with yourself. And the important thing I think you touched on is not just being honest when it comes to your personal life. Even from a game standpoint, you were honest with yourself to say, hey, my game needs some work. And so often we live in this bubble of not seeing reality. And you can't fix a situation until you admit to it. And so the awesome thing you did, and I hope that those young athletes that get an opportunity to watch this episode will see, is that you have a awesome young lady who was able to play at a D1 level, go to a D1 school, notice that she needed to make a transition for her personal self, and made that and continues to play at a high level. So I appreciate you being that example to those that'll be able to see this show. I will ask, what has the transition been like so far at the school, and what are some of your goals going forward?
So now that I'm here, like San Mateo has helped me a lot. Like my coaches gave me a lot of mental health resources, which I deeply appreciate till this day. They were really patient with me too, because there were times where I had my mental breakdowns. I was struggling, and they recognized that and they offered help. So they made that transition a lot easier. Also just being around people that care, or just people that just want to have fun and just have a good day. Because me, like, even if I'm not close with someone or a group of people and we're all just hanging out having fun, that helped me a lot transitioning here. And a lot of the times, like my friends, we're all busy. We all have busy schedules, so no one's really hanging out with each other. So I also learned how to like have some alone time and use that alone time wisely. So the transition, it started off pretty rough because I missed my school, I missed my teammates, but coming here, it's just helped me a lot, and it feels like I've been healed for the most part, and it just feels like I've been taken care of. And of course, on top of that, my skill set has gotten a lot better. And yeah, it's just everything's just gotten so much better since I moved back home.
That's good. That's good. And so you touched on it. Not only seeing a therapist, or seeing, your school having a mental mindset coach. I think is awesome. And it actually, again, the circle of what Out and Up is really trying to push. We've been blessed over the 3 seasons. We had Dr. Cunningham out of DC, a psychologist. We've had Miss Angie Wiley out of the Missouri area, who's a mental mindset coach, and she does workshops on athletes and dealing with their mental mindset. Our athletes need to know, even outside of the game, there are other aspects, even outside of the physical standpoint, there are aspects of life and even the game that we need to focus on that will only help us when it comes to performance. And so I asked you real quick if you can touch on it, just like, how do you, I don't know if you've ever had other teammates or other friends that may have this certain mindset, or they kind of bought into the whole stigma when it comes to mental health or seeing the therapist. What are some things you may say to that person that says, hey, I recognize there's some things I'm dealing with, but they have a certain view of being open to say, hey, I need to go see a therapist? And Mr. Rogers, Antoine will say himself, I see a therapist. I've learned even later in life, it is a great part of you growing. And so, what would you say to the young athlete that notice there's some things they need to address, but have that fear of how they may look if they go see a therapist?
Um, don't think you're not gonna look cool because you have to see a therapist. Like if you genuinely need help, go see someone. I highly
Right.
recommend it. Um, don't stick with one therapist, especially if you and that therapist is not clicking. I switched therapists, and it was a pretty good decision of mine, because all therapists, they all have the same purpose. They all want to help you. Sometimes some therapists may ask you questions where it really gets you thinking, or there's some questions where therapist asks and you're just like, oh, I don't know if I want to answer this. So when you start therapy, don't just stick to one therapist, especially if you and that therapist are not clicking. Once you find a therapist that you genuinely connect with, stick with that therapist.
That's good. That's good. So, what are some of your goals going forward in volleyball? What are some of your goals going forward?
My goal, well, I would love to go back to D1, but this time around, I want to go to a school that's best fit for my major and
Okay.
has like other things on campus I can join. Other than that, like it's just really having fun and going to a school that I really enjoy for my last 2 years after this season. I even if it's D1 or D2, I just want to have like a good time. I want to get my bachelor's degree and just finish off strong.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it out there, Miss Flowers. We have an awesome HBCU here in Fayetteville, North Carolina, Fayetteville State University. Their Broncos, they've won some championships over the last few years in the CIAA. So just in case you start looking, keep Fayetteville State in mind. Maybe that'd be an awesome place for you to check out or whatever as you start to look whenever you decide to make a transition. I'm sure the Broncos would love to have you on the squad.
For sure.
So I want to just say, outside of the sport, I always love to touch this with our student athletes. What are some things you do? I heard you say sometimes you're very busy, but are there some things you do for fun outside of the sport?
Uh, it's just mainly hanging out with friends, like trying new foods, exploring the Bay Area a little bit. This year was like the most where I explored the Bay Area because I have to commute 40 minutes to school every morning. So I'm already like exploring that part of the Bay Area. Also made some friends like in Oakland, Palo Alto, etc. So I like to see my hometown a little bit. I've been stuck in San Jose. Like when I was younger, I really never left San Jose. I went to San Francisco, Oakland because of family a couple times. So it's just really like exploring, trying new things. I'm pretty much open to doing anything as long as like we're all having a good time. It's all positive. That's
Okay.
it.
All right. So I just want to ask, outside of the sport, what are some of your career goals? What are some other things that you would love to do? Or do you have some goals as far as being an entrepreneur? Like, what are some other things that you look forward to doing even beyond the game? What's Miss Flowers into?
So I want to do something with creative directing. I've been into social media content and just like creating like graphic posters and stuff since I was a little kid. So I really wanted to stick with like making social media content or being like a social media specialist, probably like for a sports team or some creative company. But I also want to brand myself, whether that's like making clothing, modeling. I don't know. It's just like something with creativity. My major is business administration, concentrating in marketing. So I still want that business aspect of it. But yeah, it's just anything with like social media, creativity, and branding.
That's good. That's good. So for the young, as we get ready to kind of wrap it up, I just ask, what's some advice you give to the young athlete playing a sport, maybe in high school as they prepare to go into college, to in regards to focusing on their life outside of the game and the things, whether it's personal um, care or whether it's even a career goals. What are some goals you give them as they begin a college career?
You're gonna go through so much stuff. I definitely went through a lot of stuff, and being able to be here and stand strong is a big thing for me. So, like I said, you're gonna go through a lot of stuff, but it's how you handle it. Yes, you have your sport as your outlet, but you also gotta make sure you're happy, like off the court, off the field, whatever sport you play. You just gotta make sure you're happy in both areas because sports can only last for a certain amount of time, especially if you're not planning on going on pro. And you just gotta make sure you're healthy, you're happy, and you're doing well. Because there are people who would go to like their dream school and they're simply unhappy and they don't want to leave. But I say, don't be scared to do what's best for you and make decisions that, again, are going to make you happy. I'm going to keep emphasizing that point because happiness, excuse me, happiness is very important. It's better than like the school you're at, etc., the cloud, whatever it is. Make sure you're truly happy, and whatever you're what's going on, whether it's inside your sport, outside your sport, make sure you handle it. Don't sweep it under the rug. Don't act like it's not there just to focus on your sport, because it'll start eventually creeping up on you to the point where you can't even focus on what you want to do. So make sure you're handling things, make sure you're taking care of your happiness, and just do what's best for you.
All right, all right. That is great information. And again, I always appreciate that much more our guests that are not only on just talking about the surface and what they do as far as the sport or even in classroom, but those that are willing to be transparent about some of the adversity and the things that they face, because it is that very honesty that will help the young athlete coming along. And so, Jordan, we're going to get into our last couple of questions. And the first one I always ask is, how important is it to have positive people in your circle?
Very positive. Like once I feel any sort of like animosity, just negativity, I just simply stay away from that person. And it's not personal. It's just like I'm trying to protect myself because I already went through a lot. I trusted people I shouldn't have trusted, hung around people I should have hung around, and it's like I'm old enough to be like I want to be around positivity. Even if I don't know you well, I'd rather be around that energy than to try to get close with someone that may not have the best energy, if that makes sense.
That's good. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And so our final question we always ask every show, who or what is it that inspires you in life?
Um, I have two people. I'm gonna start off with my dad. My dad, he is probably one of the strongest people I know. He's the one that got me into sports. And there are times where he does go through things, but he always works so hard to provide for me. He never gives up. Same with my mom. She's super positive and she always does her best to provide love for me too. So when it comes to my dad, like sports and just having that never give up mindset, sorry, never give up mindset. And my second person would be my brother David. He committed suicide a week after I announced my commitment. And he was just like my biggest role model. Like we did everything together. He also played sports, but he chose to serve in the military instead.
Mhm.
So, but one thing he always would like tell me is like never give up, make sure you're on top of your stuff. And even though he was struggling, he always made sure he brought the family together. So yeah, every time I think about him, it just motivates me even more to just keep going. Because I also went through the same struggles as he did,
Got you.
but no one knew that. So when he was the one that committed suicide, that's when I was like, okay, I want to lock in and do better for my mental health. So yeah, he was probably my biggest inspiration for sure.
All right. Well, I again appreciate you, but I normally don't do this, but just with you touching on that and overcoming and experiencing that having that experience with your family member, and even that you either had some of the dealt with some of the same thoughts as your brother, to the young person watching, what do you have to say if they feel alone, feel like they don't have anybody to talk to? I want you to just leave them with some encouraging words on how they address, how to seek help. What would you say to that young person?
I would say it's a sucky feeling to have. I don't miss being in that dark place at all. But just know there's better things coming. With my transition here, it was hard. I knew life was going to throw challenges at me no matter how hard I was working on my mental health. But see those challenges as like, okay, I'm gonna learn from this. I want to get better at my mental health and just overall life. Just know like there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. Please don't do it. If you really feel like you're doing it or you want to do it and you're harming yourself, please go talk to someone, go see someone. Don't be closed off. I was very closed off and I thought I had people in my circle that were generally trying to help me. So it's just like finding those resources, finding people that will genuinely help you because Like there are people out there that want you to stay on earth. So I highly recommend like getting help and finding your happiness.
That's good. Well, Jordan, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule on the West Coast, joining us here on the East Coast. So we can just continue to encourage young athletes to really focus on life outside of sports. If you play at the highest level, y'all always know I say it. That is great. It is great to be, it is good to be great in the sport you're playing, but it's even better to be great in life. And so I appreciate Jordan joining us and really touching on the various subjects, mental health, suicide thoughts, and all those things that she was willing to be transparent about. I think it's awesome. I always say to people, we're blessed to overcome issues, not just for ourselves, but to help other people. And so I appreciate her joining us and sharing her story today. And I just challenge you all to not only watch this episode, but share it with others and continue to join us as we go out and up. Thank you, and we'll see you next episode.
Thank you.